All right, are you guys ready to roll?
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna get ready to roll. There's supposed to be somebody here to introduce me, but I'm Ken. And I don't let them say anything anyway, so that's okay, right? This class here is complicated grief. And this is a class, I'm gonna let you and warn you that if you would love to participate, which I'd really like everybody to participate, but if you don't feel comfortable participating, don't feel the pressure that you have to, okay? Because we're gonna talk a lot and we're gonna share a lot, and I find that that's really probably one of the best ways to handle this complicated grief. For those that can we just take just a minute, and if you just state your first name, and by the way, everything that happens in this class, what I would like you to do is I'd like you to just keep it very, very confidential. Can everybody hear me okay? I don't have a microphone, and I would say for those of you that can't hear really well, I will try to speak up, but come up a little closer. It's okay to come up here. Sometimes I do spit, and I know that that's hard on you, but they do have towels here that they can give us. Oh, can some of you share how your spouse has passed away? Yes.
I'm Nancy from West Jordan. My husband committed suicide.
It's hard. So hard. Others. Yes. Hard. Others. I passed away in 2021. Because of things that had happened. Why? Double whammy, double pain, double hurt. Yep. Not a little, a lot. Okay, others would like to share, yes.
My husband had a stroke.
Hard. So hard, yes.
I'm Melissa from
Those are tough. Anyone else care to share? Yes. Welcome to Payne. I'm sorry that you both of you even have to be here, but I'm glad that you're here because you'll learn lots. Promise. Yes, your turn.
Excuse me, my husband's death was totally eclipsed by the death of my other children through their grief. Not really, but feelings of guilt that I'm.
Okay. And then we'll talk about guilt here in just a few minutes. Anybody else wish to share? Yes. Hard one to watch. Anyone else? Yes.
We look forward to being there.
Had a hand here. You first. Anyone else? Anyone else? Yes. Okay, now to go where we're headed, because I've got to get us back on track. What I would like you to look at is that whether we have someone who dies from cancer, whether they die from a horrible disease, whether they die from suicide, whether they die from a shooting, which wasn't probably necessary, notice and see that all of us look at our deaths, and there isn't one that's more complicated than others. I'm going to let you know that. Complicated grief comes mainly because we spend too much time in the thinking process. And I know that that's going to be hard for you to just grab onto for a minute, but just kind of follow me through for a moment, would you please? How many of you lost your loved ones during COVID where you wasn't able to have a regular service? Okay, I'm going to talk just for a few moments on that. And then I also want to do, because those of you that may have had a spouse die, whether it be by suicide or the tragedies of getting squished by trucks, or whether tragedies of a shooting, there might have been some of you that might not have been able to have even an open casket, that kind of thing. And I want to talk about that for a moment. What I want you to grab onto is that as we go down through these, and I'm talking about specifics now of what I just mentioned, realize that we don't go through the normal process of grieving because, first of all, let's go to COVID first. They didn't let you. Those of you that had loved ones die here in Utah, I think they had only let you have up to 13. In some counties, they let you have up to 19 people. Okay, that's really, really hard. I had a dear friend who they had 6 children. All 6 children were married. And when it came time to have their funeral, they had to draw lots between the sister-in-laws to see who didn't get to go to the funeral. Of course, it was broadcast on Zoom, and the son chose, when his wife got picked, as she couldn't go, he chose to be with her and the children at the home watching it by Zoom. It's one of those things where you have to have traditions. And one of my beliefs, guys, is that one of the things that Satan did when COVID came through is he was trying to stop traditions. Okay? He was trying to stop traditions. Traditions of a funeral is that you go and you have people come through the line and they offer you condolences. You're able to visit with friends and neighbors and people who loved your loved one. Those things happen, and those kinds of things stopped. And then the next thing that happened with COVID is that, okay, now I can't take food over because it's going to be contaminated, or you're going to have to sit it on the porch and I'll ring the doorbell and run away and then call you on the phone and say, you can come pick up your food now, it's on the porch. We stopped going over to the neighbor's house to visit them when we knew that they were hurting. And I could go on and on and on and on and on, but we stopped those traditions. The same thing goes on with these complicated deaths of suicide and that, because people come through and believe it or not, there's a lot of people that don't know the story. And so guess what they're going to ask? Well, how did he pass? Or what happened? And now we have to tell those horrors over and over. For this dear sweet sister right here, whose husband was shot and killed because he was in that psychotic state. And I'm so aware of those because I deal with those each and every day of my professional life. Those are really, really hard because now not only are we telling the story, but we're also re-experiencing the pain, and that deep pain comes over and over and over again. And that pain then turns to anger. And then we start and our minds take off in a million directions. Now, where I'm going with all of this, and now it leads to why the complicated grief, is we go in and what we're doing in our minds. And I want you to know that normally, this is normal, is your brain wants to have answers. It wants to have answers. And I'm going to teach you science. Is that okay as I teach you the same? Your left brain, okay? Your left brain is your side of the brain where you're logical. And your left brain doesn't want to shut off. It doesn't want to shut off until there's an answer. And then when it does get an answer, if it does get one, which I'm going to let you know doesn't come very often that you get an answer, then what it does is it doubts the answer that it's given. And so it keeps your mind going over and over and over and over and over. And where complicated grief goes is that it doesn't shut your brain off. And so what we do is we start to not sleep well. Okay, I'm going to ask by show of hands, how many of you are sleeping really well? I got 1, 2. 2 out of this group. Do you see where I'm going with this? Okay, when we don't sleep well, our brain does not heal. Now, I'm going to give you some weird. Is that okay today? I've never taught this to a group large. I've taught it to tons of small. And I'm going to be honest with you, I go around and I train other therapists to do what I do because of what we've learned with the neurosciences. And I didn't come up with the therapy, but I've become a trainer for them. Is what we know is that with our brain, what our brain wants is it wants to have resolve. Is that okay that I tell you that? And over here on the left-hand side of your brain is the logical side, and that part of your brain will not stop until it has some kind of an answer. And so that's what's hard for complicated grief, is because we're thinking it through and we're thinking it through and we're thinking it through. And we always ask the question, what if? Or what could have happened, or what should have happened, and we woulda, coulda, shoulda, all over through that stuff. And then we ask those questions, well, why couldn't this have happened, or why did this have to happen? And then it takes it even deeper when we're religious. Did you guys know that? It even takes it deeper when we're religious, because we think to ourselves, God loves us and he knows me, and I've been doing the very best that I can, and why couldn't he have prevented this? And so those things come down on top of us, on top of the other thinking. And again, your brain doesn't want to let go of it. What we know is that we've been doing therapy wrong since Freud. Can I tell you guys that? That if anybody, I'm not going to ask how many have been to therapists, but I want you to know that we've been doing therapy wrong since the beginning of therapy. Okay, in my profession as a graduate student going through 30 years ago, and I know that even the ones that are going through today, they go through similar stuff that what I've been taught, is we've been taught you to process and by thinking. That's how we've been taught to help you process it by thinking. And so I want you to think this through, and I want you to go do this. And how many of you had parents or even were parents that when you as a kid, your father or your mother said, what are you thinking? Think this through. Or how many times have you ever said that to your own kids or your own grandkids? What on earth are you thinking? And I want you to know that that's not how our brain works. Now I'm going to share with you how our brain works. And then for the last few minutes that I'll have, I wanted to show you some things that you can do to slow your brain down and do what we want to have your brain to start to do, to start you to heal. Is that okay? Now, what happens is that by the neuroscientists, and this is what has been really, really hard, because the smart guys are the neuroscientists, and they are the guys that know how your brain actually works and what goes on in your brain. Therapists don't know anything about how your brains work and what goes on. I'm just repeating to you now what I have been taught and what I've learned, and I believe it because it's had such an amazing effect on the people that I work with. Okay. What they discovered is that our brain functions a lot the same as when you go into what we call REM sleep. Okay, when you go into REM sleep, we can study what your brain is doing because we now have the ability to do that. And so what we know is when you go into REM sleep, when you finally get in there and it goes into REM sleep over here on the left side of your brain, right around in here, it lights up and it goes crazy. And any of you ever seen a PET scan? PET scan is where they show you the brain and where it's working, and it goes to, kind of a black and then a blue and then an orange and yellow, and the more your brain is working, the brighter it gets. Over here, it's going nuts and crazy. Immediately over here on the right side of your brain, a little bit higher up, and oh, by the way, this is where you house your memories. This is where you house your emotions. And they start talking with one another. Okay, it takes off and goes nuts and crazy. And then as soon as that starts to happen, then across the back of your brain, and especially right up here at the top, and then it goes down over the back of your brain. And for those of you that are opticians, you can stand and tell me how that really works, because I really don't know. Have I got any opticians in here? Hate it when that does happen. Okay, but this is where your optic nerves are. And it goes over, and then literally you are seeing me and I'm seeing you, because the optic nerves on the back of our brains are going nuts and crazy, and you can see. And it goes and it lights up. When we go into REM sleep, brothers and sisters, you're actually seeing and you're dreaming. Okay, now, can I use you, sweetie? I'm sorry, but I'm going to use you. I'm going to use your husband. When he went into PTSD, you have to understand that he was seeing what was going on. He wasn't thinking it, he was seeing it. Okay, we call those nightmares. Okay, we go and have nightmares. We go and we have bad dreams. And what we know, excuse me, is that not only when our brain is working, when it's in REM sleep, it works the same when we're not asleep. We go in and we start to think things through, and our brain starts to connect the memories, and all of a sudden the emotions come along and connect to those memories. And our anxiety, okay, fight flight syndrome goes up. And you cannot process when you're thinking and you're elevated in your emotions. How's that grab you? You cannot process, and people don't process. So you think it through, but you don't process it. It doesn't connect. And we'll do that over and over and over and over and over. And all we're doing is we're building what we as neuroscience, I'm not a neuroscience, but what they call is they're building pathways. And those pathways are linked. And so a trigger comes along, it's linked to the pathway, and immediately you'll go down, and immediately you'll become elevated. And you can't process. And what is it your left brain wants? It wants to have answers. It wants to process what's going on. And as long as that's happening, you need to know and understand that it won't happen as long as you're elevated. Okay, now the neuroscientists. What they know is that we now use what we call bilateral stimulation. Okay, bilateral stimulation is, and the very best bilateral stimulation that we have is your eyes moving back and forth. Now, here's Kent Allen, the therapist, learning that's also Kent Allen, the member of the church. I am a pioneer junkie. Okay, do you know what a pioneer junkie is? He's a guy that loves pioneers, and he's got 987 stories and adding to them daily, no, not daily, but at least monthly. And I have all these cool stories of all the pioneers and all of the terrible, horrible that they went through. My grandmother was with the Willie Handcart Company. Okay, she had her feet cut off right where the arches of your feet are, and she walked around on the heels of her feet for the rest of her life. Had her feet cut off in Fort Bridger. Okay, my wife's grandfather, great-great-great-great-grandfather, he lost 9 children and a wife at winter's quarters as they were exiled out of Nauvoo. He lost them in 6 weeks' time. He had 3 children from a previous marriage that lived. They were older, but all of his children with his new wife, because his wife died in Nauvoo of malaria. His 3 older children, they lived. All of the young children died along with their mother. Now, what I know is this man was a wonderful, wonderful man. And we have journal entries from lots and lots of people telling about how wonderful he was. We have journal entries from people that knew my great-grandmother and how wonderful and happy she was and what a good, loving person she was. And it always mystified me as a therapist is how could they be so happy having the traumas that they had? As I read through the Book of Mormon as a therapist, okay, I'm looking and reading and thinking, Nephi should have had PTSD. He cut a guy's head off, for heaven's sakes, and he had to wear bloody clothes. Now, doesn't that sound weird to you? Okay, but I want you to think for a second. The mode of transportation during the pioneer time was what? Louder. It was walking. Has any of you ever noticed what your eyes are doing when you're walking? They're going back and forth. Your eyes are going back and forth looking for snakes in the grass or a rock or a stick or something to trip over. Look and see what your eyes are doing. Okay? Riding horses. I was raised on a horse ranch. Guess what your eyes are doing when you're riding a horse? Back and forth, back and forth, and back and forth. And guess what your body's doing? It's going back and forth and back and forth. It's bilateral stimulation. And I'm one that says, okay, God has now taught us as neuroscientists, not me, but taught them as neuroscientists, as now as therapists, because for the first time in history, 6 years ago, neuroscientists started talking with therapists. Before they were the gods, and they wouldn't come down to talk to us peons. But now they come down and they're talking to us and we're learning by them and they're learning by us. And we can now go in and we can fix and retrain that. Now, I'm going to take you back 17, 18, 19 years ago now. Okay. I was working 19 years ago with nothing but sexually abused children. That's what I did for all the time. I got burned out. I became depressed. I had to get out of working with sexually abused children. And so I jumped in, and I have no idea what possessed me when I did, but I jumped into working with veterans. Okay, and then I started working with first responders, men and women who put their lives on the line every day. And I don't know how many critical incidents a veteran goes through in a day, but I can tell you the average police officer in a week will go through 7 critical incidents. I can tell you that the average firefighter during one of their 2 to 3 day shifts will go through 21 critical incidences. You and I, you more than me, you've had one, the loss of your spouse. Okay, I've never come upon a dead body. I've never watched anybody get shot. I've never watched anybody shoot somebody. I've never watched people blown up. I've never rolled into a place where people have been murdered by the masses, which our army and our folks from the military go through. I've never gone through any of that stuff. And what happens to them is they go in and they get those visions and they get those images implanted in their brain and it won't let go. And I want you guys to understand that you have done the same thing with the loss of your spouse. Is it's moving and it's going. And what I'm saying to you now is that there is a way to fix it. And I'm going to show you a couple of things today, if that's okay. Can we do a couple of things? Okay, the very first thing, because again, it's going to be hard for me to go like this and everybody watch my hand with your eyes. Okay, in your mind, what I want you to do first is I want you to go in and I want you to examine your body from head to toe. Would you do that? As you go in and you examine your body from head to toe, are you feeling any pains, whether it be physical, emotional, mental? Are you feeling any? Okay, if you are, put it on a scale of 0 to 10. 0 is, nah, nothing at all. 10 is that I can hardly stand it. And I'm going to guarantee you that there's been times in your lives when it was at that 10, if it isn't today, there have been times that it has been at a 10. Okay, by bilateral stimulation, your brain goes in and literally what it does, guys, is it calms your brain and it sends a chemical that will calm your body down. Is that weird? Now, simple little things. Okay, first, I'm going to teach you a little thing. Can both, all of you put your hands like this and make a little butterfly? Yeah, you got to turn it around. There you go. Bring it up to your chest. And I want you to go down along your collarbone. And as you get to the bottom of your collarbone, you're going to find 2 soft spots. Can you find them? Everybody found them? Anybody not find them? It's right here below the collarbone. So your collarbone comes down. Time out. A collarbone comes down, and right here, there's some soft spots. Right there, your feet. Okay, there's a point right there, and we call them tapping points. For any of you that have done any tapping, we call them tapping points. There's a number of tapping points. We have them here on our forehead. Okay, we have them here on our cheek. We have them right here underneath your nose. You have it here on your chin. You have them on your wrist. You have them, there's some soft spots if you want to go to your knee. If you would rather do knees instead of your chest, you go to your knee and you come up, but there's two soft spots right above your knee. Okay, oops, I can see where there's the soft spot. You can go there, but here's two right here. And we do tapping. Now, what I would like you to do is for those of you that have pain, and just follow my tapping. Okay, close your eyes. And I want you just to focus on the pressure or the pain or the anxiety, any of those things that you're feeling. And I'd like you to stop and take a big deep breath. Does any of you notice an up or a down to that pain that you've been feeling? Is it dropping? Okay, for those of you that are going like this, literally that's that chemical already being released into you that will help you start to relax. Now, we want to go and we want to take it and put it on steroids. Okay, because again, do you remember what I'm saying is that I had you focus on it, which is a what kind of process? Thinking. And now I'm going to take you to a visualization process. Okay. Now, pretend with me that all of you are feeling anxiety. Anxiety is usually found right here in our chest. Sometimes it's in our stomach. Sometimes we feel it in our shoulders. If it's here in our chest, what I'd say to you is, what does it feel like? And answer the question to yourself, what does it feel like in my chest? Somebody will say to me, oh, it's like somebody grabbing a hold of my heart and holding it. Some would say it's an extreme pressure, like an elephant sitting on my chest. Literally, what those of you that are feeling anxiety that way, is picture in your mind an elephant sitting on your chest and watch that elephant now as it gets off and it lets go. For those of you that like to work out, pretend that you're lifting the barbells and it was too much and it come down on your chest and your buddies raced over and lifted it off, so you actually watch as it lifts it off. I'd like you to do that. For those of you that are feeling pain in your shoulders, your neck, those sorts of things, picture yourself going and getting. I don't like people touching my body, so I don't like massages. Tried it once. Lasted about 80 seconds. My wife was really weirded out because she went and got a couples massage. No, we don't do massages, okay? What I'd like you to do is visualize something that you might enjoy, whether it be a massage, whether it's you're working out, or that elephant coming off your chest. If you're feeling it in your throat, a lot of times we feel guilt, and it comes here in our throat. Imagine yourself going up to the top of the mountain where nobody's at and screaming all the time that you're doing it. And just so you know, what we're doing is we're tapping, and you're tapping. They go in and they do the research studying people's REM sleep, because I don't know if you know that when people go in, babies, you have those little babies, have you ever noticed their little eyes are fluttering? Bilateral stimulation, the processing. Your eyes will flutter back and forth, okay, 40 times, left, right, and it's counted 1, 2, 3, 4, okay. And the average person is 40. Isn't that weird? The body's weird, but it works. And so close your eyes. Okay, and picture yourself enjoying one of the whether it be a hot shower, whether it be an elephant getting off your chest. Big breath. Body's calming down. Okay. For those of you that want to try the eye movement, which is the best, you put on a mirror or on a screen, you go from left to right and you follow back and forth. You just count to 40 and let your eyes move back and forth, back and forth, back and forth 40 times. What you'll find is your body will start to calm down. And when you start to calm down, then realize that you can start to think things through. So far, so good? Okay. Now, here's what happens. When you think through, understand that you're going to go and anxiety is going to raise back up again. Your emotions are going to come back up again. When you go, and if you can go and go with, when they hit 5, calm back down again. Go back down to tapping again. Back down to moving your eyes back and forth again. And it'll bring you right back down. That makes sense? For those of, yes, ma'am. It does, okay, and it helps, but when you read a real book. Got to read on a real book, a Kindle, a phone, a computer, those sorts of things, because of the pixels in a screen, okay, it activates the left-hand side of your brain. And so it doesn't do what we need it to do. It just goes and activates the right side. So if you're going to read a real book, a real page, real paper. Does that make sense? Yes. The testimony, it actually does work. For those of you that want to do therapy, find a therapist that does either EMDR or ART. EMDR, which stands for eye movement desensitization reprocessing, okay, or ART, which is accelerated resolution therapy. ART is EMDR on steroids. Okay. Yeah. Right. Yep. Yes, ma'am.
What's the difference between?
Rapid eye therapy, most of the time, it's not done by a trained therapist. They've been trained by a coach, or somebody's trained people to do it and they're not certified. And so that's the difference between the two. Okay, and EMDR and ART are all trained therapists that have had to go through extensive hours of training to be able to do what we do. I do both. Okay. So the rapid eye stuff is basically they're teaching coaches and people to do it that aren't trained therapists. And so when people get stuck, they get really stuck. And that's why we worry about that. So I'm not trying to dismiss it, but I'm just saying that it worries me. Yes, it does. Yes.
One session helps so much.
Testimonials of what's going on. Yes, ma'am. Calms the brain down so that you're processing, and it'll last about 4 days. Yes. It's, you know, the dreams, and I've had classes on dreams and that sort of stuff, but there really is nothing that says your dreams are going to be negative. But we do know that when you've had trauma experiences, negative experiences, that you dream about them. And then because of the pictures that your brain sees and the emotions that are connected to it, that your emotions go way up, and that usually creates a bad dream and sometimes nightmares. Just a thing. Okay, we've only got 2 more minutes. What I would recommend for you to do, okay, for those of you that want to find a therapist, find out whether they do EMDR or ART. As was mentioned with my EMDR things, I'm usually seeing people that don't do the ART as well. It's usually 10, 12 sessions, and that's pricey. For ART, my average session for an ART session is 3.8. Okay. Yeah, probably not, because they're similar but not the same. And the ART does go quicker and faster. I see between 20 and 25 first responders or military people a week. And, you know, we're talking the ugly of the ugly of the ugly. Things that you know, you guys don't want to know what's in my head. But these guys get through it, and it fixes, and it does marvel. So I'd encourage you that. For those of you that don't want to, then there's 4 more things I want to share with you. Okay, do the tapping, but there's other tapping on your knees right there. And it's so amazing. You can actually tap your sides. Okay. What you don't want to do is sit at church and do the little butterfly tap or thump on your head. People will think that you're weird. You know, but it's so amazing, because I even have first responders who say, I'm walking up to a scene, and I don't know if you ever know, police officers and firefighters never run. Did you ever notice that? When they're on a scene, they never run. I was blown away as I'm learning this stuff. They've been trained not to run because they don't want you falling down and hurting yourself on the way. Okay, but literally they tap on their way as they're walking. So tapping is a wonderful thing, and it can calm you down. Okay, they also said there's a couple other things that are good. For those of you that want to, yoga is another good way to calm your body down. Go take some yoga classes, even us old guys. Okay. The very best thing that they found is actually a combination of one of the other. Believe it or not, dancing. Dancing is a way that gets your eyes going back and forth and your body moving back and forth. And dancing is a very, very good way to get your body and your mind down. For those of you that have a little bit more money and can afford a horse, horseback riding is proven to be one of the number one things, especially as we work with our first responders and our vets. Equine therapy is amazing, and it's because of, you know, the movement that goes on in the body and the eyes, and it's helping our vets immensely. And I go around the country and I vet. I know, you know, I vet places to send people, and I look for equine therapy because these centers that have the equine therapy, they're getting their people better faster, 64% faster. And so those kinds of things are simple. And then what you do is you just can go down and you calm down and you think through till you wrap it up, and then calm down, think through, wrap it up. And those are things that you guys can do all yourself. You don't need a therapist to go and do that. You just have to be able to catch yourself when it starts to ramp up and bring yourself down so that you can now start to process and you start to think through. And it's just like this sister right here on the front, when she said she was an ART and they were doing, all of a sudden your brain reconnects. That's the weird thing about this stuff that they have discovered. And it just reconnects. And it's like it goes and disconnects from the old way and replugs in the way that it should be. And my belief is that's why we didn't have all the PTSD back in Nephi's time. It's my belief that as our pioneers come across, you know, they were up and they were going and they were moving, but they were walking. And as they're walking, guess what they're doing? It's just God's way to help us get better. Okay, yes. There's a little bit of research, but the research isn't deep enough to know yet whether that's going to be effective. Okay, yes. Yes. Here's my thoughts, and I've done a couple of deep dives on the ketamine therapy, ketamine, whatever you want to call it. Ketamine therapy and mushroom therapy and LDS or LSD therapy and all of those things, believe it or not, it calms the brain down. Okay. The problem that you have with ketamine therapy is it works really, really good, but there is no therapy. And so it calms the brain down. Your brain thinks for a couple of days, but what happens is you go through the therapy and it's very, very pricey. It's expensive, guys. And then it goes down the road and then you'll have to do it again and it's pricey. And then you'll have to do it again and it's pricey and you'll have to do it again. And the average cost for a person per year is around 10 grand. Okay, but it's very effective. What they are finding is that if you go and do the ketamine therapy and then a couple hours later, as your mind is back in tune again, going in and doing therapy with a therapist, because your mind is still relaxed. That's becoming and being proven to be pretty good. You'll also hear of them doing like mushrooms and LSD. They're trying to get that marijuana therapy, that sort of stuff. Again, there is no therapy that goes with it. And there's a big chance that you'll become addicted to it. And you don't want to hear what I'm about to tell you, but there's a bunch of the Navy SEALs, and the United States wouldn't let them do it here in America. So they went to Mexico, and of the 21 people that were there, 4 of them became very, very addictive and were booted out of the Navy SEALs. 2 of them died. And it's so you got to be really, really careful what's going on with this stuff.
The ART is not.
I'm not seeing my people come back. Yeah, we call it cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. Sometimes. Most of the times, though, the brain is connecting. My people just say, I don't know what we're going to talk about today, and they don't come back. That's where the CBT helps. I call my therapy garbage can therapy. I just throw everything in the garbage can and stir it around, and what comes out and what's best is what works. Okay, but literally that's where we go. Okay, lunchtime is right now, and I kept you over, so now you're going to be at the back of the list line. I am sorry. So we will catch you after. I'm going to ask questions if you need to.